Well, it's always a relief not to be forgotten. And the song has been very good to me, and I think good for all the things that it embraces in its message, which is basically wake up, pay attention. That's the first step.
I'm Nic Harcourt, and we are here talking with Stephen Stills. First of all, it is an absolute pleasure to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm trying to keep it that way.
We're here to talk about your event that's happening on April 26th at the Greek Theatre. It's an event you've been doing for a number of years now. How did it start, Autism Speaks?
Well, it was in the family. We had an autistic Asperger's child, but we went through the whole, getting it diagnosed and then the idea came up that we should do a benefit. We're sitting with Neil and Elliot and Kristen, and Neil had said, "Well, I'm going to be doing the bridge school, but you should take over that mantle." And I went, and I looked at him with, "What?" and the idea took root, and she asked me to be the host. Me and Neil and I were in partnership, and I said, "Well, you're going to have to do everything," and then Neil's manager spoke up and said, Elliot Roberts spoke up and said, "Well, we'll be right behind you." And then I said to him, "You were supposed to talk her out of it."
Stephen knows what goes into these
and
things.
Then, but it's, because it's a good 3 months of stuff to get this thing going. And we only do it every 2 years.
Oh, every 2 years?
Yes.
Right.
No, we couldn't prevail upon my friends every year.
Every year. It's a lot. And as you said, it's a lot to put together a concert like this. And especially when you're asking people to perform for free. You're asking people to give up their time and make sure they're in town on the right night and all of that kind of stuff. And I know you've got a lot of friends out there in the music world who do show up for you, but nonetheless, you've got to make the phone call. We're going to do it. Can you come and perform? This is the 7th concert, right? So you've been doing this for 14, 15 years now?
We started in 2013 and we took a couple years, or the pandemic, we took a couple years off.
Got it.
Yeah, so it's about every other year that we've done it.
So it's an awareness thing though as well, right?
Yes.
It's not just fundraising, it's also awareness.
No, that's the main point actually to me.
Yeah.
Because the way I put it is, well, most everyone I know is on the spectrum. All the best people are.
It's true.
And we need to help our brothers and sisters.
Right.
But it's really great. And we made this wonderful movie years ago called Autism the Musical. She did, and it was basically a musical with autistic kids. And it was such a great and rewarding experience that we wanted to keep going and do something else. And this sort of came as this matter of, logic, I guess. But it turns into a thrilling show in spite of how many things we mess up every time. So.
It's a live music and a live music show with a whole bunch of moving pieces and different artists coming on and coming off. I mean, the fact that you can put something like this together and get to the end of it is really a feat in and of itself.
No artificial intelligence here.
No, all analog. And I should mention too that we always have performers who are on the autism spectrum, and 2 to 3 performances. And this time we have John Frizzell, who's a well-known film composer. He has a bluegrass band, and every member of the band is on the spectrum, called the Spectrum Bluegrass Band. And we have one of the cast members of Love on the Spectrum. Her name is Abby Romeo. And she's sort of, I don't know if you've ever seen that show, but it's pretty wonderful. So she's kind of got a fan base already, and she's going to be performing and singing. And so that's kind of, the center of it all. And
we're meeting and speaking at a very interesting time in the history of our planet. And you know, yourself as a writer and your compadres who you made music with 50, 60 years ago, had a lot to say about what was going on there. And you know, your song, There's Something Happening Here, is a song that you told me a little earlier never really went away, but people are beginning to hear that song, perhaps younger people for the first time. What is that like for you as a songwriter and somebody who was so active in the 60s to hear that song starting to resonate with a whole new generation?
Well, it's always a relief not to be forgotten. And the song has been very good to me, and I think good for all the things that it embraces in its message, you know, which is basically wake up, you know, pay attention. That's the first step. And it also is kind of neutral. It basically has to do with whatever you're worried about. Speak up about it, you know. And that was on purpose. And little else was because it just appeared out of nowhere upon observing a demonstration that turned into a police action.
Right.
And those days have gotten better too, but it's been a near thing, you know. And now it's, you know, it seems to be reverting. Although the 50s seemed very popular in the leadership, and we just, there's an ancient Chinese curse: "May you live in interesting times." Yeah, but I'm exhausted. That's enough. I'm of an age where that's enough, and but the fact that I've got the song that's showing up on T-shirts and signs and stuff at the demonstration, unbidden, you know, that gets good to you, you know, particularly when you're basically on everybody's side, nobody's side, you know. It's like, you know, fix this. We're being very uncivil, and it will, you know.
Do you hear or are you aware of any up and coming musicians who are picking up the mantle of protest music?
Even if I did, I wouldn't tell you because they could speak for themselves.
Sure.
Yeah, it's like they emerge, you know. But topical songwriting, and it gets a very tricky, you know, it's a slippery slope, you know, before it turns into propaganda.
Well, sure. But the music industry has obviously changed an awful lot since you were writing and recording songs in the 60s.
Not really, they're just as soulless and godless as they've always been. You know, they're just, you know, profit-oriented, and it makes it hard. But, you know, you just have to go watch the movie about Bob Dylan, No Direction Home, about, you know, where that came from and its genesis in the, you know, in the 12th century, troubadours and
when the minstrels were roaming
Yes.
around
They were
medieval Europe.
they were the Walter Cronkites of their day.
Right.
Or, you know, if you don't know who that was, poor you. You know, they were the newscasters of the time.
Right. But back in the 60s, there were only 4 TV channels. I mean, if you were trying to say something, there were not as many outlets where you could be heard.
There's one thing about that. It led to a great deal of efficiency. And the word succinct actually had meaning. And the message was clear and precise. With all of this, it drowns out everything, you know, and there's so many cross currents and well I think, you know, and then suddenly the newsies become the story, and that's never good.
Yeah, we were just talking a little bit about when the story can become something else because of the news cycle that is constantly looking for clicks, as they say now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, the focus has to be on the music, and the focus has to be on the message. And coming back to your concert on April 26th, Autism Speaks, have you seen any new developments in teaching people how to live with being on the spectrum? Because there's tons of people on the spectrum, but it used to be that
there's a young girl on the hit show Survivor who's on the spectrum, and she's becoming a star because she's young and pretty, but she's really together and very well spoken. But you can feel that she's living right below the surface, and the relationship. It's just really fascinating. But so it's becoming,
and
again.
To jump off what he's talking about with his song, For What It's Worth, and Stop Children, What's That Sound, Everyone, What's Going Down, that's what we're doing with this concert. It's, and what Autism Speaks has been doing since their inception is to speak to people about breaking stereotypes, and that there is, if you've met one person with autism, you have met one person with autism. They're not all the same. They don't have the same characteristics and attributes, but there is common ground. So it's been an educational nonprofit and our film as well, when we did Autism the Musical, it's the same thing, to show actual people living their lives and for who they are. And it's not the same for everybody.
Well, just like everybody else, everybody's a little bit different.
Right.
We've all got our own thing.
We're all on a spectrum.
Yeah. Let me ask you before we wrap this up about music today, about you performing today. I know that you don't perform that often, but when you do, you try and get some of your old pals together. Neil is a longtime collaborator. Are you writing today? Are you making music today?
Well, I never stop, but at the same time, the closer I got to that birthday that starts with an 8, the better the R word sounded, as in retired or semi-retired.
Sure.
And then the word gets around, and they go, oh, he's retired. We don't have to pay him. Let's get him. And we got, but I've always got my hand in, but I also write essays and, piddle with a book, kind of a memoir of sorts that's like, it gets, I'm in a program that requires you to talk about yourself in a therapeutic sense, and I talk so much about myself, I can't think of another interesting thing. So it runs into that. And then observing there's so much going on and so much trauma and so much uncertainty and fluidity going on right now. We don't know where it's going to fall. So it's really hard to land on something that's profound and might have an impact, And then the music takes care of itself. It's that, don't bury the lead. It's, find the lead and so find a little something that'll go to and let it take care of itself.
Well, the concert is Autism Speaks, and it's at the Greek Theatre on April 26th. We're talking on, what's the date today? The 11th of April, I think. We're speaking right now. Obviously, this will be living. It's the concert's in 2 weeks from today. This will live on our YouTube channel, so we want to send people to the concert at the Greek Theatre. You'll be there, of course, and
I'll be there, and my buddy Neil, and a bunch of other guys. She remembers the lineup. It keeps changing.
And the concert is Light Up the Blues, and it's to benefit Autism Speaks.
Oh, excuse me.
That's okay. And we have obviously Stephen and Neil Young, but we have Linda Perry, we have Cat Power, Rufus Wainwright, Nathaniel Ratliff, and who am I forgetting?
Billy Idol.
Billy Idol, thank you so much.
We'll be there.
And then, of course, 2 amazing artists who are on the spectrum.
Right.
And we have Christina Applegate as a presenter.
Oh, fabulous.
And Kate Hudson is joining us. And
it sounds like an amazing night.
It's going to be it's always a great night. No one has ever regretted coming to one of these shows.
Well, we look forward to it. Thanks for coming in and talking about it. Real pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much. Thanks, man.
Thanks very much indeed.
And thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. April 26th at the Greek. Light Up the Blues.